the whole day has been about unprecedented growth. It's going to happen. It's an India story. We're all honky dory. The only challenge is people. And otherwise, we're all fine. The market is good. All segments are going to do well. And there are lots of places to go to. So let's kind of try and dissect this a little bit, and maybe we'll try a bit to be a bit contrarian if it's all okay with you, because then we can go and discuss it over a single malt if Naveen's giving that to us. So we have a wonderful array here. Some young Turks, some large corporations, and a person who I absolutely enjoy bringing or hearing him speak about his different opinion on how he thinks the industry should go. And he's represented that on the panel. So let's just go and we'll name them as we go along. To start with you, as the newest entrant into Sindhudurg and whatever Sindhudurg development is doing, quick introduction to what it is all about, because it's very different as I read from what everybody else is doing. Why did you go that route, and would you think that would succeed more than the others? If you can just introduce that part, then we'll pick the string with the others.
Sure. Yes, well, thank you for having me here, and I think that's a very poignant question, because so the route actually is something which I think would possibly not pass a data-driven feasibility test today. If somebody were to say, where would you go to invest? These are the different locations. So it actually was more than a project. It was a quest. And it still remains a quest, which in an area which I think is potentially could be one of the best coastal destinations in the country. And the quest really is, there are many things which were missing at the beginning, like what was the connectivity? It was just Goa, and at that time you had the South Goa airport, and Mopa was not even in the vicinity of being a reality. But one decided to go on it to say that if I decided to stay in this with an absolute long-term vision, I would just have to sustain the first initial build and then see how the infrastructure would come up behind me. So, and I think that kind of an attitude is something which we possibly saw and just to give me a little introduction to myself, I grew up in the Siddharth Goa family. And for the longest time, you saw just a few resorts, Fort Aguada, Siddharth Goa, the village, and then a few others, just be in a place called Goa, which had a few flights, from Indian Airlines. There were direct flights from Delhi were still 20 years away. And it was actually my parents who lobbied with the government to start charter airlines into Goa to try and to sort of just add an alternative to just coming in from one domestic flight. And so these were things where sometimes when there's the reality of a location, that what will work here, but there's also the journey to create a certain reality. And is it what is valuable about Sindhudurg? I think the coastal beauty of that area, what we've built there also is a little bit of a milestone of saying what is the potential in this. And that's the reason, yeah.
So in terms of heritage, structure, culture, locale, is there something specific that you should wish to be known for or people to experience, which is different from run-of-the-mill from everybody?
So I think it's the location that I'll talk about my location in specific, then I'll talk about the larger area of Sindhudurg. My location in specific is that the confluence of pristine beach, which you've probably seen in the Caribbean or in Maldives or in other premium beach locations, river and hill, and just being completely away from it all. And I think that itself, this is are the basic ingredients to make other locations in that destination into something where luxury premium resorts can reside. What happens is how to differentiate it from the mother node of Goa is that you always looked that Goa was that first foreign destination that an Indian person came to before he actually discovered true foreign destinations. And I think, wow, to differentiate Sindhudurg is where can you have and when you know how Goa is moving in a sort of very fast-paced urbanization, which is good and bad and debatable. I think here is where you have to turn attention to what can premium luxury beach tourism provide.
So, as an aside, I visited Siddharth back in '87, and I was there recently, and I'm quite amazed with what you've been able to turn around to. So, congratulations. Let's come back to the topic actually. Lots of growth. It will be in regional centers, it will be in tier two, tier three, it will be far flung resorts, it will be experiential. Um, for all of you, one by one, are the numbers truly stacking up, or are the numbers really for the 12, 15, 18 locations that everybody's tracking? So I don't see same store, I see gross. And I'm not in the industry, so I don't know the exact numbers. And while sustainability as a subject seems to have kind of petered off, but we'd say sustainable growth and profit, is it still going to be linked up largely in the 12, 18, 20 maximum locations, and the rest will be additive? We'll pick up someday, we'll find the solution to the staffing. Because let me start with Ashish. You're concentrating largely, as I understand, and correct me in the recent past if your directions changed, in the tier one, tier two cities. You wish to be an asset head.
Only tier one.
Sorry?
Only tier
Only
one.
tier one. So, I mean, I thought that, but let me just extend it because you make new announcements quite often. You wish to be there, and you think that's where the value chain to your company and to the customer lies. And you brought in the new concept that I think you spoke about in Mumbai recently, which is a converted commercial building into a wonderful hotel design, which means that that's where your belief lies in it. So the belief will be there because, there the supply will always be limited versus the demand. But why don't you wish to go otherwise? And do you think this whole story about other locations and other locales is going to be successful and sustainable? Or do you think that's what I want to do and that's why I do it?
So I think the last sentence is the most appropriate, perhaps, that every company has a circle of competence. Sure. And you create the best risk reward in that circle of competence. So I think I must fully admit that that's the core reason that our circle of competence is tier one business hotels. Not going to tier two, tier three is not a disbelief in those markets. It's just that we worry that the economics may not stack up to the extent we want them to. And when I say we want them to, there are two things there. One is what sort of a return you want, what sort of a risk you're willing to take for that return, and what's your time horizon. And I think when I look at these three things, we feel a little uncomfortable about rapid investment in tier two, tier three. There could be great success stories there. But if I want to replicate that across 15, 20, 25 tier two, tier three markets, we feel risk reward and the timelines we have may not stack up. And in the end, we represent institutional capital, which tends to be, for lack of any other word, sometimes lazy. And we think the opportunities in tier one are 3x of what we are doing right now. So till such time we don't saturate our home base, as they say, we don't find compelling reasons to create a second circle of competence to understand tier two, tier three, or even for that matter, leisure. But does not mean we have a disbelief in the opportunity per se. It's just that we don't think the returns for us stack up comfortably in those markets today.
So let me add to that question more in being a vocal hospitality expert for many, many years. Therefore, would you say that the pronouncements, the general pronouncements about the depth and the width of the market in these kind of cities, in the same cookie cutter approach that people are following, those modern number of rooms, is a bit of a overplay and a misnomer, or they are playing a long game, though they say it's a sequence that will work in the short term?
I don't know, Mr. Keswani. I've not really looked at the honesty of the announcements, right?
Expert bata raha yaar tumko.
Nahin, I'll tell you. I think there's a lot of noise. There's just way too much noise in this sector. And there's noise in every sector, by the way. But we also have to respect the fact that other sectors have grown to be very large size. So the proportion of noise to the size of the sector is tolerable. Our sector is still tiny. And probably the noise is not a percentage of our sector, it's multiples of our sector. So I think that worries me, that there's just too much noise. Now, I started by saying I have no statistical evidence of saying what I've just said. But my interpretation is that when I hear the announcements, it may be true, but it may take much longer. As I said, I don't ever bet for somebody to fail. I only evaluate whether there's a plan to succeed. Right.
So it's an intuitive kind of response for the moment, you would say.
Yeah, I think there's just too much noise.
So coming to Aryavir, newest, fastest growing mavericks, if I may call both of you, in your Clarkson as well as the bridge part of it, some keeping to heritage culture, similar to the Manesar piece and, Neemrana hotels, in a manner, if I may say. The others going in a different route. You've largely been specializing in the 2 and 3, tier regions. Do you still believe that whatever is being announced and set up is truly, as this title says, truly sustainable, if I may use that word loosely? Is it an overplay? And what could be the challenges other than the availability of talent? What could they be that people are, while they might know it, they're not really focusing or sharing with us?
Thank you, sir. Before that, I'd like to just touch upon what Ashish said. It was quite significant. So, building assets and owning assets is a very different play to actually managing assets, right? So they're more sort of, obviously, they own all of their hotels, right? Even for us, maybe 120 hotels are on management contracts, but the rest, only 10 we own, and those are majorly in tier 1 locations. So the capital appreciation that we have seen in owning hotels in tier 1 has been far more greater than even all the managed hotels combined, to be very honest. When it comes to the development of the landscape of hotel development, I mean, of course, I was reading the Hotelivate statistics. There are more hotels being signed, but very little are opening out, right? So, of course, signings have been at an absolute record pace, at 44,000 rooms or something last year, something like that, but I think only 13,000 rooms actually opened out, if I'm not wrong. So, but talking about the sustainability angle, are you talking about the environmental sustainability or? Okay.
Got to be sustainable growth.
Yeah. So where I feel the challenge lies is that majority of India is in the rural parts, right? So I think only 5% of the entire industry, the branded rooms, are of the total industry size. Right, so I don't know, 180,000, 200,000 rooms versus 10 million rooms which are unbranded. So that's where majority of the rooms lie. I mean, $7 billion worth of revenue generation from branded and 17 billion from unbranded. I mean, I think that's what I read. So and obviously 8,000, 7,000, 6,000 ADRs are quite large for majority of the India to afford. Right. So what I'm trying to say is that I believe that we believe in tier 2, tier 3 strongly. We're there. We built operational capabilities in remote areas, gotten to know the people, gotten to know the panchayats, gotten to know the absolute ground reality, and that's where we thrive, right? And that's where that's where our expertise lies. So yeah.
So it has to be, let's say, an amended story. Would it be safe to say that?
No, I would say that
an amended methodology.
I'm very optimistic about where it's going, because
for Clark's hotels or generally for rest of the announcements?
I would say that in the mid-scale segment, right? Very, very optimistic about that. Yeah.
JB, you and I were talking. Are the pronouncements a little bit like all the FMCG and MNC announcements over the past? The markets are like in the rural areas and tier 2, 3 cities. It just needs different packaging. People haven't really tested and felt and eaten what we can do. And once we kind of bring it together, it will. Largest middle class growing market, largest earning capacity. And that's the kind of story in a bit of a similar manner that I see echoing in the hospitality industry. What is right about the sound waves, and what should be the amendment? And you said you guys are working a little bit on it. What is this all about?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple views around this, and then for us, when we look at India, and if I was to just use the word diversity, India comes with its own diversity. So on one side, you have this big global trend, and we obviously have that in India as well, is urbanization, right? So Delhi by 2030 will become the largest mega city in the world, and India will throw up 7 mega cities. So there's that one definite trend of urbanization, which means cities like Delhi NCR will have 8 or 9 or 10 ecosystems running, and can take significant amount of capacity as they build out, and that will happen across many other cities. So that's one. And then you have the next layer of cities that are coming up, and the so-called tier 2, borderline tier 1, and will start to mirror a current tier 1, over the next 10 years, and so on and so forth. So I think the fundamental thing is India's race to the third largest economy, 5 trillion, 6 trillion, 7 trillion, whatever those numbers are. It's consistent growth, anything between 5 to 7% GDP, will trigger travel and connectivity and everything else that all of us know about. But I do echo what Ashish said. For us, it's been going into markets with clear and present demand. As Ajay Bakaya said, ultimately, for the business to be sustainable, the numbers need to add up. And we've learned that over 20 years that, stick to what you know. Having said that, as we look at tier 2 markets and maybe tier 3 at some point, we need to right size the assets. I think Manav spoke about building smarter buildings, responsible buildings, tighter buildings. Manning is an issue. We know that. It will continue to become bigger and bigger. So we have multiple models that we are now testing. I'm telling you, for us, it's all about reducing GFA. Our teams fight for 0.2 square meter of GFA. And that debate can go on for hours. Every building is starting to get mapped tighter and tighter and tighter. We debate ceiling heights. It's a debate. 12 feet, 11 feet, air conditioning costs. Why is that extra area there? Who's going to man it? Why are outdoor sort of, your horticulture landscapes unnecessarily, and so on. And to every point, is this extra space and lobby that is being mapped out going to give you revenue? If it's not, take it away. Resize the building. And today now you have AI to do architectural work and massing of buildings and things like that. So it's becoming very scientific. We believe we understand it far better than we did 15 years ago. We are getting very, very good at it. Our mannings are possibly one of the tightest. That helps us, energy costs, and then all the other stuff. So one has to be very, very careful which market, sizing, and by just the population and the land mass in India, real estate will come at a premium. And we are a real estate hungry industry. And we recently built out a 207 roomer in BKC, abutting BKC. You remember that old site, 1,400 square meters of land. Perfect building. And is doing, obviously well. So we have to get into those kind of zones. And if you keep right sizing the assets and work with people in other markets who understand those markets better, we don't. And that's the way to possibly cautiously crack this thing.
So the advantage with the knowledge and where you come from in a business perspective between InterGlobe, you, Ashish, to a particular point, Aryavir, you are defining it because you're the investor. When you want the last cent to come from the space and the earning. Whilst on the other side, largely as I understand, and sorry, Zubin, they don't mean any criticism, the brands are not specifying and picking that up both as an opportunity to give you as knowledge. You are forcing it on them with logic. Would you not think it is as much their responsibility to now look at brand standards from this opportunity in the tier two differently without pressure from you guys as investors? Because it's just the right thing to do for the investor and the owner, as well as specifically for the buying power of the customer. Why are they not so, expansive on that?
Not so difficult. It's a separation of P&L from the ownership.
No, I'm
right?
saying, why don't they do it? Why
No,
would you?
so-
Why you've been pushing them? You
No, no,
have.
so
I've heard from them.
No, it's not that we have to push them, but I think this industry suffers from a fundamental construct of separation of who runs the P&L and who owns the hotel, right? Because money hurts, and that's a reality. And it hurts the owner a lot more than it hurts the operator. But having said that, I think operators have done their bit to collaborate, to respond to what the requirements of the markets are. So I don't think we lack that collaboration. I mean, I give you an example. We converted a whole portfolio to Holiday Inn Express. It's 14 square meter room. They didn't have that brand standard anywhere else in the world, not in Asia. It has done reasonably well, It has its own challenges. There's complete inelasticity of product at 14 square meter, But nevertheless, that experiment has worked. So I think they're doing their bit. But India is a market where you need to. It's not a subset of the global anymore for a large company. India is an independent country, an economy which requires its own product and solutions. So owners in India have to take lead and collaborate with international operators or domestic operators to find the right product service mix. And I think it's happening. Should happen faster, but clearly happening.
No, I bring it from the point of view of sustainable profits from that side by doing the
No,
right
but
thing.
they're-
Or are we just largely following cookie cutter and therefore is the title a bit
So their
upended?
Their mandate is different. Their mandate is distribution. Their mandate is to build distribution,
Okay.
right?
No, I
And they're building
understand, right.
distribution by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, hotel brand. I think there are hundreds of hotel brands today. For an owner to look at. I don't think even hotel companies understand their own brands. But I understand it's not about
Okay.
brands; it's about distribution, Rattan.
Sure.
It's no longer about brands. Let's call a spade, right? They're only working for distribution, not for the brands.
Yeah.
So we know what they're doing, and we need to know what we are doing actually. So it's a clear separation of responsibility, so to say.
My question actually comes from the notes that I read of Manav's last owners meeting, where I think a lot of owners also complain saying there's still a bit of irreverence to the reality. And that's where I came from, because that's what increases or keeps you away from a sustainable, better profit in these locations, particularly where the growth is happening. Zubin, Hilton came in a long time ago, 86, 87, kind of slowed down, came up with a truck with it, Trident, kind of went into a sleepy giant mode. Now, suddenly, since you've taken over, the star has been born in terms of the brand and yourself. What are you doing differently very quickly? And is this part of the mandate that we just talked about, that's going to be new?
I think
Other than some soft brands that somebody spoke about? So what's causing the acceleration? Where is it going to be? And truly, which part is going to be sustainable profit?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Keswani. Good evening, everyone. I think what we are doing differently is, to Ashish's point, taking ownership of the P&L and putting ourselves in the ownership's shoes. And Hilton in India, I consider it to be actually the silver lining of the cloud, because the portfolio was, until 2 years ago, a relatively smaller size portfolio. What that allowed the company was a complete white space opportunity in this market. We still have hardcore deployable brands, very high recall brands, like Hilton Garden Inn, Waldorf, Conrad, Hampton. And for us, India is really the playground, right? So, and there's a lot that's been said on this panel before. I had the
Playground as
opportunity.
a Playboy treats it, or playgrounds for experimental? Which one of the two?
I'm sorry, say again. No.
No, I said playground from a playboy perspective, or playboy from playground
No,
from
I think
running a different match.
playground from a growth perspective, clearly. But so there's I was saying there's just a lot that's been said on this panel before I had the opportunity to hold the mic, right? And so one of it is how the the brands are just perhaps completely choosing to ignore the market realities and chasing growth, right? My view and our view is as follows, right? You have to focus on the fundamentals and you have to build the business right. I think we have a great opportunity to do that. And that is what we are choosing to do at this point in time. So, we have our stated market ambition was to cross 75 hotels by 2027. Let me please tell you that we actually crossed that mark in July this year.
Congratulations.
So, and then that 75 will very soon become 100, will go to, so on and so forth. A lot of it is the market has momentum at this point in time, right? And that's just not a Hilton advantage. I think that's a market advantage, and the market will continue to grow. So I think we are sailing that tide, right? Also with the others. I think what's important in that is that, and over the last 1.5 years, we indeed have announced big plans ourselves of growth, right? The real statistic in all of that is 60% of the growth of the deals that we have announced, 60 to 70% are actually hitting construction or have hit construction already. So I think that's a pretty good metric. There'll always be a wash in the business, but the wash in the Hilton pipe is not going to be that much strong. Why? Because we are focusing on the fundamentals in the market. So focus on quality. And I think we are chasing growth. More importantly, we are chasing quality. So if you look at the quality of tie-ups that is happening, the quality of partnerships that are happening, for example, the Waldorf and Hilton at Delhi GMR, which is right here as where we sit, and so many others, that is happening and recurring on each and every transaction that we are doing, right? So that 25 very quickly becomes 75, will go to 100 maybe first quarter next year, so on and so forth. We are in the long term focusing on opening these hotels right? And secondly, putting ourselves in the owner's shoes by localizing to a great extent. So when we launched Spark, for example, which is a brand based out of the US, when we launched Hampton, right, which is a no F&B brand, we actually went through a full exercise in this market, right? And we went through almost 6 to 8 months of market research, market demand analysis, what the customer preferences are, and we localized that to the Indian market, right? So I think I don't want to comment on what everybody else is doing. I can talk to our approach. Our approach is very robust, and I think it might take us a little bit longer to get to where we want. That's all right. I think ultimately, and the way this market is maturing, also just the nature of ownerships, and there was a question about tier 1 markets and tier 2 markets. I think, to me, and having beyond Hilton run other hotel companies and having exposure across various markets, I think that's driven by the nature of the ownership. That is driven by what is the cost to own that land. If there is a historical cost of land, if it is generational land, clearly to the current generation, it's cheap to build that hotel. So hence, their holding power in a tier 2 or tier 3 or even a tier 4 market is much more than hasty institutional capital, which is seeking a return every 5 to 7 years. So I guess a lot of factors are governing
Modules
this.
it will,
Yeah.
sure. Coming back to you. From Sudade, this new project and whatever else that you're doing too. Give me 2 quick thoughts on what you still believe the classical hoteliers seem to miss. Yeah.
So just to get an idea that a classical hotelier or a conventional hotelier, I think what it's not that what it's missing, but I think what can be brought in is that at some level, after all our feasibility studies, after all the investments and the numbers, and I'm talking here just specifically from Goa and the new project, which are in a leisure destination. I think we should know that finally the customer, we're not giving them a transaction. We're giving them an experience. And if Goa, speaking specifically on Siddharth, if Goa wants to start moving to an area where you've got your sun, sand, sea, you've got your buffet, and you've got your beach, what else do you have to entertain the guest when they're for them to return year after year? I mean, if especially when you look at what's happening outside the hotel, where Goa's rapidly urbanizing, lot of real estate is coming in. What was that lovely beach shack that you thought was a secret is now completely taken over, and the experiential aspect of it is gone, which is very critical for leisure destinations. So I think what really all the hoteliers or the classic hoteliers in Goa would have to say is, how can I keep this person in my campus, in my building, in my area, and give them a reason to keep returning other than food and beverage in a room.
So not just the normal hospitality, but what's typical, what's local, what's the enjoyment, what's the difference? Changing tack a little bit. Lots of questions that came up when I was moving around and earlier from some other parts. We've suddenly had a slew of announcements, one on new soft brands, and I'll ask everybody for your opinion. And why do you think that's happening? Is it a diffidence? Is it a new market? Soft brands, then Marriott sign up with the fund and the investment in CG hotels. You guys and your setup with Tribo, and what do you believe is the reason for it, or is it one more channel of evolution which benefits from the larger distribution, or it shows a diffidence in being able to manage some markets and some sizes of the hotels? So let that be taken on by somebody else, and let me take care of the master distribution and the costs and revenues that come with it. We'll switch the direction. Aryavir, as you're the watcher, a little bit of a competitor in that business, your opinion on what do you believe is the true reason, and would you think as a customer that makes sense?
I think it's a very interesting what's happening, because I think the larger players, it's very difficult and not sustainable or even worth their time and money to really go out there to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, 30-room hotel, 40-room hotel, and try and make returns, because at the end of the day, they're catering to shareholder value. We understand that as well. And for us, brands like us, domestic family-owned businesses, we also understand where our weaknesses lie. They lie in technology, absolutely. I mean, if you were to ask us to put a 1 crore rupee opera in a 50-room hotel or a 60-room hotel, that's impossible. But of course, there are multiple opportunities, alternatives out there now. But yes, distribution is a huge part of the entire landscape, and I would say that us as a domestic player would love to connect with a partner who has the technology and distribution that they, and I'm sure for the brands as well, for them to get a portfolio of hotels in cities where it's difficult to develop themselves and operate.
So you're pitching to some of the guys who haven't done it to say we are available for a marriage.
It's a perfect match. It's a perfect.
No, so
match.
I'm just sorry. I'm going to drag a little bit. Is there a risk into true brand essence by too much of this kind of way of going in that direction? So, Ashish, you want to go for it, and then we'll go for the guys who are actually doing it. So let JB do. No, first you go, because you're the wonderful wonderful opinion which I respect a hell of a lot. So what do you think it is? Has it a risk for brand essence?
Let me give you an extreme point of view, so that if nothing, it excites some conversation. I think it's a very flawed strategy. Okay, it's going to. I don't know what are they trying to do. So
that was my question.
Okay, so let's break it up. Hotel companies, as much as they think they have great brands, they suck at branding. Completely miserable at branding, even at a corporate level. And let me try and tell you what I'm saying here. Zomato. What did Dipendra Goyal did few months back? He renamed his public company Eternal. Why? Because he's going to run very different businesses. And he's a smart man who never wanted the failure of a new enterprise to reflect on the parent. Okay? Smart move. And a lot of consumer companies do that. You would not even know a new brand which just died in the market was owned by Unilever's. it would not rub off on Unilever's. Hotel companies don't get this. So under the parent brand, they will sign this experimentative brands. And if those brands fail, the customer will look at that brand and say, what the heck is this? So I feel it's a strategy full of risk, poorly thought through, though the intent was right. The intent was Microsoft can buy WhatsApp, okay? And when they bought WhatsApp, WhatsApp was worth nothing. And today WhatsApp is very valuable. But WhatsApp remained WhatsApp. It was not Microsoft WhatsApp, right? I don't understand why is Spark by Hilton? Or why is that thing by Marriott? Or why is something else by somebody else? If you want to experiment with a new customer and a new segment, for God's sake, create a new company. If that company succeeds, you got a great entrepreneurial success. And if it fails, ignore it. Your main customer, your main brand identity does not take a hit. So I actually think it's very risky. I wish them well because I'm their partners. So I don't want them to fail necessarily. But there was a different way of doing that. And those examples are there in the consumer spaces.
Zubin, you want to go next or JV?
No,
I was
Ashish
hope
is
that.
clearly
Thank you.
stirring it up.
I want to
I
stop
think-
this conversation. Thank you. Got it there.
I think you're talking about your partners. We're not partners yet. So maybe, but just jokes apart. I think, see, there is.
Quick answers. We got one more question. 12 minutes.
Yeah, see, clearly, and this is what Girish said in the conversation today, right? There are independent hotels with great personality, but it is a hyper competitive market, right? And there is at some level a requirement for gaining some distribution on a highly visible platform, and I think that is where this partnership works, right? Now, brands would not ideally like to dilute their hard-coded brands, right? Hence, so for example, you would not affiliate. A Hilton has very strict brand standards and very strict codes, right? But there are, for example, the SLH, right? The Narendra Bhavan is an SLH hotel, which is a Hilton partnership, right? So I think there is an ask and a want there. There is a synergy there, right? And I think that's how this needs to be looked at. Ideally, these tie-ups cannot become the entire brand itself. They have to be a certain percentage of the brandscape, right? They have to be, a certain small percentage of the entire portfolio. They cannot take over the brand personality. So I think, and again, in tier 2, tier 3 markets, tier 4 markets, where visibility is important for that good hotel, who does not have that core brand standard, that's where this becomes extremely relevant.
Okay. I grant you. JB?
Okay, I'll address it slightly differently. One, India's going through a pattern that any growing economy globally has gone through, which means it will start to consolidate, it will start to create structures, and so on and so forth. And people out there will have to go out there and do it. Somebody's got to do it, right? So it's not going to remain the way it is, that you have smaller hotels who seek to play the bigger game and be part of the bigger pie. Cities are growing, spending power is growing, etc., etc. So when the economies grow, they throw up several patterns, and we just have to keep recognizing them and addressing them. So that's one. I think your second question was how brands can be held together. So I just want to sort of backpedal to your previous question, which was to Ashish. And I'll just draw a narrative from our own joint venture where Accor is deeply vested in this and significant financial investments, right? So they've had a sort of a hat of an owner as well as an operator. And together, one of the strengths that JV bought was we together understood the operating model as well as the development and the investment model. So we were actually in many ways preparing ourselves on what would be the next logical step for the organization. Leadership at scale is a subject by itself. And it's not a journey for the faint-hearted. It comes fraught with challenges, but at the same time, massive opportunities that can be harnessed. We believe we understand these challenges, and as the company is being built out, I think several building blocks are being put into place. I'm not at a liberty, obviously, to talk about it. So we know how these how brands scan this thing, and to your point, what should be the big branding strategy, and many other things. Someone's going to go out there and do it. We hope we are one of those, and we are very optimistic about it.
Sure, go ahead.
The only thing I would say, I was indicating consumer's mind. So, for instance, Marc Jacobs is not by Louis Vuitton. Marc Jacobs is an independent brand owned by LVMH. Similarly, there could be a brand, let's say ABC, and you don't have to say by the main brand. My problem is that you have your entire P&L comes from your core brands, both for the owners and for the operators. Those customers come to you seeking a certain promise and a certain standards of expectation. The same customer, when he sees that tagline, whether a prefix or a suffix or a tagline, may get hugely disappointed. And as you know, a disappointed customer doesn't complain in a business, he just doesn't check back in, right? My worry as an owner and an investor in the brands indirectly is, why are we using the big brands prefix and suffix? I am all for creating new brands to target tier 2, tier 3, tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, right? But why are we only so dependent on those 2 names, 3 names, 4 names, 5 names? Look at LVMH portfolio today. They don't say Marc Jacobs by Louis Vuitton just because Louis Vuitton was famous, right? Marc Jacobs is Marc Jacobs. Today they're selling Marc Jacobs, right? LVMH will sell it to somebody else.
But not
So
necessarily.
let me just
Why
come
is
to it,
everything
because
by
we-
Hilton or
let
by
me-
Marriott?
No, it's not. For example,
Zubin, hold
Nomad
on.
is not Nomad
Zubin,
by
hold on,
Hilton.
hold
Yeah.
on.
It's,
I'll just make 2 statements here. Coming from what Ashish said, Lexus, Toyota started off the same way, realized, what you're saying is right. And just to close up this, and I would like to, maybe leave some space for questions. In the present Indian scenario, in the present scenario internationally, with what is happening, right? Would you think the title saying great growth, great possibility that everybody spoke about, other than little staffing challenges, would you want to still keep on the optimistic tone of the subject? Or would you say, I think it's time to step back and be a little optimistically conservative, maybe, because some realities we aren't seeing? Just a yes and no answer from everybody. So would you say yes or no?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yes, yeah.
I need 2 sentences. Okay, sure. So I look at this more as a business sort of risk, because we aren't just in hospitality. So I'd look at hospitality as one angle, and then textiles, which is another significant part of our business. So I would say hospitality is going okay, but yeah.
That's a yes. No, I mean, you don't have to be optimistic.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Optimism is not to be questioned. Absolutely, yes.
And sustainably profitable.
For a long time to come.
Yeah. Yes.
I think my response is not a yes or a no. I think it is always, even in good times and in bad, it's always important to be pragmatic. So clearly India is a great opportunity. This will continue, but of course, this market has matured from where it was 20 years ago, right? There are going to be cycles, and there will be more defined cycles. And I think, of course, there are a lot of hotels being signed. At some point, these hotels will start opening in the next 18 to 24 months. Clearly, they will impact occupancies in the markets, right? We've been through this, by the way, before, and we've recovered from it.
So history is sometimes an indicator, but banking on history may not lead you up the right way. But just before we close for questions, a statement to make from what again we heard from Ashish. I would recommend that all of you hear podcast by a guy called Seth Godin, where he talks about branding and why hospitality companies are not the best for branding, and why, and what he suggests there. Because there have been many, and he's a marketing guru, but it's not my opinion that you do. So let's go with the topic. Everybody is very optimistic. Few challenges, markets, environment, world. We'll be able to handle it. Little bit of learn to ride the tide in the crisis, and there is a value for the mix for the customer. And as you said, look at the bits and pennies a little bit better in the right locations, and the brands need to learn it. But on that note, would there be a couple of questions? No point ending it without this wonderful panel not being questioned, not asking a question, but please rapidly question them. Anybody? Please raise hands and the mic will come to you. Or are we waiting for the glass of wine? Going one, going twice, going thrice. So optimistic is the way to go. Challenges need to be faced, but we are very hopeful. Tier 2, Tier 3 will have its own special challenges. Customers and brands will amalgamate and find their way. And on that note, have a great evening. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.